Your Gregorian calendar, which you basically set up, that goes back to the sun. You know, that's not the right way to measure time. Because in the Apocrypha, it says that the Lord set up the moon to measure seasons.
Yeah. Now we want to change. That's enough on that topic. Now going to the next topic. We want to show you that the Roman Empire, that Russia was not a part of the Roman Empire. Where can we go? Where can we go, brother? Revelation 13, Revelation, which, yeah, let's go there. Let's go there. Go to Revelation 12. Anywhere it speaks about the 7 heads and 10 horns.
This is the book of Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy.
Yeah, those 7 heads are not talking about. That's that old 1992 bullshit, man, from One West. And they ain't talking about the Greeks, how they do it, the Greeks, the Romans, the Spanish, the French, the Germans, the Russians, and the British. And out of Britain came America. It ain't talking about that, man. So how deep are you, Nate? Like I said, I wasn't thinking about you, Nate, but your name seems to always come up. When you chart out those heads, Russia's not a part of that at all. Although, as you read down until you defeated the bear, the bear as a Russian, that's going to take you down. That's going to be, but that's not part of the original beast or the Roman Empire, and it's not part of NATO today. Okay? Because I want to read something. It says here, Roman Empire, right? It says the land around the Mediterranean Sea and in Europe ruled by Rome, while events recorded in the books of the Old Testament took place prior to the emergence of Rome as the sole power. Because when you go back to the period of the Maccabees, you see the influence of Rome, and they had a lot of power. They were up and coming power that people kind of was reluctant to fighting. They wasn't in their full power yet, but they were coming up in the power. As a matter of fact, if you understand the breakdown of Daniel, the 11th chapter, you'll understand, and go into that history, you would understand that Antiochus Epiphanes was given hostage to Rome as a how can I say it, as collateral for his father, which I believe that was Antiochus III, if I'm not mistaken. Right. And he was, I believe it was 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. And he knew the power of Rome because he was there. He was captive. I mean, they fed him, they took care of him, but basically he was a captive under them. All right. So I mean, you got to, in order for you to know the scriptures, you got to know history. All right. It says, while events recorded in the books of the Old Testament took place prior to the emergence of Rome, its power as the sole power, because there was a point where Rome became the sole power in the Mediterranean basin. Rome's influence was already strong at the time of the Maccabean revolt, and I just said that. Beginning in 167 BC. And from that point until Rome assumed control over Palestine in 63 BC, all right, its power influence events throughout the eastern Mediterranean world. The spread of that influence had begun much earlier, all right?
This is you can see this is the map of the Roman Empire at its height.
That's wherever the red is, right?
Yeah, all red, and that's all in the European, and it excludes Russia. Yeah. You know, matter of fact, I just bring it up real quick to the camera and show on the camera. And this is basically at the height, as you can see in red. That's at the height of the Roman Empire. That was what they conquered. And if you see north of that, that's where you have Russia at. Where the Caspian Sea is, the Black Sea, going straight up there. So they never had a stronghold in Russia, because that was those Germanic tribes that were kicking them Romans.
There was no such thing as Russia. The word Russia didn't, like I said, the word Russia came about later in history.
Yeah.
That's right, because they weren't able to conquer that far. Because them as they call them, the Germanic tribes, which really that was the name that Julius Caesar put on them, the Germanic tribes. They were too rough, man. They were too rough for them Romans, so they weren't able to conquer that far. So that's why they just were able to stay within that perimeter.
They were losing whole legions of top military forces, top military men, whole legions, man.
Yeah, and they show you that in movies like Centurion, the Eagle. Those are actual generals and events that took place where the Picts, and different other of those so-called Germanic tribes, or barbarians as they call them, gave them Romans hell, man.
That's why you should watch movies on the History Channel and watch documentaries and movies on the Roman Empire, because the majority of those the movies based upon the Roman Empire, those period pieces, they didn't just make it up. They're actual events.
2,000 years ago.
In
the land surrounding.
Yeah, that's how they're able to get the garb, the right dress, the right sandals, because you had different wear for different ones. You had the count, you had the senators, they wore like a toga, certain things. Then you had the Praetorian guards, they wore a certain dress. They had a dress code, and then you can distinguish between a centurion and just a guy that was just a soldier. There was certain marks, in certain way that they would wear their clothing. And that's why they're able to get all that information, because it's in the records, and they study it, and then that's how they're able to make movies and make it seem like you're back in the Roman Empire.
All roads led to Rome.
Yeah.
So let's step back in time.
Now this is according to Wikipedia. It says the modern name of Russia, Rossiya,
a day spent in ancient
which
Rome,
came into use in the 17th century.
And it would start at sunrise.
Which means the 1800s.
In these days before electric
but the first mention of that was Rush. Rus.
Yeah,
Rush. It goes back to like 800, 900 AD.
Khan. Yep, it says one of the earliest written sources mentioning the people called Rus dates back to year 839 AD. In a royal Frankish chronicle, Annales Betiani. Let's see.
Yeah, and then when you read about them 7 heads, those 7 heads have an alliance. They have a common a thing that's holding them together. Russia never was a part of that, ever. Even now they're trying to have they used to have what, the G8, now it's back to G7. Why? Because they kicked Russia out. Because the way the Most High set it up, he set up Russia to be a friction, a thorn in the side of these other Edomites, because that's going to be what's going to take America and certain things, certain strongholds of NATO down. So them 7 heads have that alliance. That's what the Lord said. He's going to take Russia and put hooks into Russia's jaw and turn them back. So the Roman Empire never had Russia as a part of them. Now this is 1 Maccabees chapter 8 verse 1. This is going back to the beginning of the Roman Empire, because when the Maccabees were on the scene, that was the beginning of the when the Maccabees were on the scene and Antiochus Epiphanes was putting hell on them, on the Israelites back then. The Roman armies were just starting to gain strongholds. They were coming up as a young military might. And they were a force to be reckoned with. Why? Because the Lord, in prophecy, the Lord was bringing them up to be the next major power. And this goes back to around 167, 168 AD in that time frame. So this is 1 Maccabees 8 and 1. Now Judas had heard of the fame of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them. And that they were men of great valor, It was told him also of their wars and noble acts which they had done among the Galatians, and how they had conquered them and brought them under tribute, and what they had done in the country of Spain for the winning of the mines of the silver and gold which is there, and that by their policy and patience they had conquered all the place, though it were very far from them, and the kings also that came against them from the uttermost